Hello, and thank you for purchasing this copy of Ben and Dan Talk Over Threads for nearly 2 hours. What you're about to listen to is not an articulate podcast strictly, and it's not really a podcast, it's more of a commentary, to be honest.
Is it purchasing?
Yeah.
Well, they're not purchasing it.
Yeah, they are.
I'm getting it for free on the internet.
We're charging them.
Oh.
Yeah, this will be free.
That's not fair.
This will be free. You're not getting any money.
I wouldn't buy this.
You've ruined it. So, basically, just to sort of clarify... No, it's alright, you can come back for now. So basically, just to clarify, this is not an articulate discussion on Threads. If anything, this is just going to be a very relaxed watch of Threads with two people getting very slowly drunk.
As relaxing as Threads can be.
Yeah, this will probably be the most mellow Threads commentary that you'll probably sit through, to be honest. But
so, first time I saw this, I did try and riff my way through it and failed miserably. So we'll see how this goes.
But if you enjoy watching two people very slowly get drunk and poke fun of a film that's probably the most depressing film ever made, I think you probably found your commentary here. So we're going to set up a sync point. For this commentary is the exact point that all of the letters of Threads comes onto the screen. So if you hit pause there and then count down 3, 2, 1, I'll count down 3, 2, 1.
So basically it says Threads by Barry Hines. So when by Barry Hines is on the screen, that's when we are good to go.
So yeah, when Barry Hines' name flashes up on that screen, you hit pause, I'll count down 3, 2, 1, play, and when I say play, hit play, and that's when we'll start. Now, if you get lost halfway through this, we will occasionally put up little clips of the film to make sure that you're sort of in line, and we'll also occasionally speak a little bit of the dialogue as it flashes up on screen, because there are some text screens that pop up. It'll just help you keep sync as well.
We should also mention that we're watching this on VHS because Dan is a hipster who refuses to have anything that was made beyond 1991.
Pretty much. If I remember rightly, we both decided one night to come up with a list of films that we thought would actually be presented better on tape than in super high quality Blu-ray. And
this is the first time, literally this thing we're about to do now is the first time I'll have seen this in any form of physical media, so it'll be an experience.
So sit back, relax, don't panic. It's not happening yet. But it might, but it probably won't.
Protect and survive.
Enjoy the commentary. 3, 2, 1, play.
You start.
Me start?
Yeah, you're talking now.
Oh, so this is Sheffield.
Saturday, March 5th, just to sync you. I just want to talk about as well that little intro with the spider. Oh, hang on. Sorry, just adjusting the volume there. Is that actually Johnny B. Good or is that a substitute?
That's a substitute.
Because I read somewhere that they had to change it for this.
Yeah, they...
for boring old licensing reasons.
I don't think they could get a hold of the proper version.
See, Chuck Berry is a very big pro-nuclear war advocate.
And, he loves those bombs, doesn't
he insisted that they couldn't use it. That was the reason, apparently.
See, the problem is, I don't know whether you're making that up or whether that's actually a genuine...
Well, I mean, me and Chuck, we go back, and... I asked him once, I said, Chuck, what was your opinion of Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
And
he was
just
like,
said,
mate...
Roll over, Beethoven.
The Second World War had to end sometime. And I was like, Chuck, those are some very radical views. And they just looked at me and...
started playing Johnny Be Good. Yeah, I don't know why he had the guitar and amp set up right next to him when he started doing that.
He has it on at all times, ready, just on standby.
Didn't Prince do something like that?
Yeah, he had every room in his house was wired for sound, so he could just record like on the toilet. But that doesn't have anything to do with this, what we're watching now. And what I was going to say was that little intro with the spider I always really liked, because it's like, it's a very... They don't do a lot of like filmic stuff in this. What I mean by that is it's all very real, it's all very documentary-esque, soap-esque. Yeah. That little thing with the spider is like the only artistic flourish where it's like a metaphor. This is a metaphor for society being interconnected. But it does work in that sense of like a little prologue, and then we get into the main action. So did you know as well that Mick Jackson, who directed this, wanted to, at one point, he wanted to get the actual cast of Coronation Street to be... That's true, actually, that's not even a joke. He wanted to get the actual cast of Coronation Street to be in the film because he wanted it to feel like... Well, he wanted to have that thing of like the subversion of what you'd normally watch on... So this whole first bit, for instance, I'm guessing we don't need to be like spoilers. Spoilers, there's a bomb at one point.
If someone's watching Threads and doesn't know there's a bomb in it.
The video cover is a massive spoiler, mate.
I'll tell you what, they're going to be really surprised.
The video cover just gives it all away. I'm not having that.
Thursday, May 5th.
That was fun. Let's do that.
NDR film.
Let's do that every single time. You won't get annoying at all. What was I saying? Yeah, so he wanted people to be like, okay, we're watching this nice, cheery thing, and then fucking nuclear bomb goes off, and it all goes to shit. And if you're watching people who you knew, like the Coronation Street cast, but I'm kind of glad he didn't do that, because I think it would have made the film a lot less... I don't think you would have took it seriously.
No, I don't.
It would have become more a bit of a joke, I think.
I don't think it would have been
It
quite
works.
as grounded.
It works because most of the faces in this are like...
Unknowns.
Yeah, so like faces you'd see in like the pub or at work, you know, and that's what makes it all effective. I forgot all about this stuff in the pub. It's funny because we're just watching this drama about this woman having this baby and Ruth having this baby, and then in the background on TV, it starts quite. I don't want to say subtle. The film's. It's not a subtle film, but it doesn't need to be. I was talking about this earlier when we did that public information film thing just now. That the best
Sunday,
things,
May 8th.
Thank you. That the best things like this don't really need to be subtle, especially not the time this was made, and probably not now actually. And I'm going to drink every time that we make a comment like, "Well, now it's more relevant than ever."
I was going to say, to be completely honest with you, I'm drinking every time I feel depressed
You just
about...
drink full stop. Massive alcohol. Did you drink after watching this, and then that drove you to drink?
Quite possibly. To be fair, I've made a rule within myself.
Let's drink every time there's a stock footage shot.
I was going to say, to be honest, I'm going to drink every time I feel depressed about this being highly relevant to modern life. So whenever I look at this and go, oh shit, that's happening in real life right now.
I don't disagree. I just find it funny that in a lot of like, you know, the Blu-ray of this just comes out. And we're watching on VHS, but whatever. Dan's hipster. But you know how all the reviews, they always have, the writer thinks he's being very clever by saying, well, it's just, who knows, we might have to do it today, it's more relevant than ever. I don't disagree with that, but I just always find it funny how it's mentioned in literally every single review of Fred's or When the Wind Blows or War Game or any of those. So I'm going to drink every time that happens. I'm also going to drink every time there's a cut. So every time the camera cuts, I will drink.
I'm actually
every time I go into briefs.
Yeah, it's raised an interesting thing. It's just sort of set something off in my head. How much political stuff is in this?
Political stuff?
Like, for example,
the most political thing
going. No, but I mean, like, for example, like, this film came out roughly around the sort of height of conservatism in Britain. So, like, how many references to Thatcher are there in this?
First aired on the 23rd of September 1984. References to Thatcher.
Because I can't think of any, really, thinking back about it. I know that there was a lot of mention of the Prime Minister and of the Cabinet, but it's kind of an off-screen kind of... They're a non-conspicuous Prime Minister.
I think because they wanted to... They wanted to make it about... You see it through the viewpoint of the family, and you see it through the viewpoint of working-class mums and dads and kids in Sheffield, and to make it this political drama where we see... There is a sort of nod to that because we see the guys in the bunker later, don't we?
Yeah.
The Bonds who get suffocated, but
Spoilers.
They're not really...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. You know. But they... that's not really political. That's still very much on the theme of people and humans. And if we'd have had loads of scenes of like cabinet ministers all sitting around going, well... They say that Russia is going to attack any day now, and like
shuffling papers and guffawing. People
in suits running around. It would have been, it would have worked as that own little thing, but it wouldn't have been the film that I think that Mick Jackson and Barry Hines wanted to make.
Oh, that's a sad scene.
Which
coming up, the scene with the kid and the bird touch.
Oh yeah. You say it's a sad scene. I mean, it's just sad scene after sad scene, isn't it?
I don't know. Pissing Woman has some.
That's the only. It's funny how they must have. We should talk about that when it actually happens. But they must have known that would be. Do you think they did that on purpose as a bit of light relief?
No, I think they did.
Because within all this terror, but they must have known that people would look at that and laugh.
Fourth largest city in Britain, population 545,000. Man throwing things in fire, steel, engineering, chemicals.
And I won't make a really obvious joke like, oh, Sheffield looks like it's already been bombed. Guffaw. I'm not from
Wednesday, May
Sheffield.
11th.
I'm not from Sheffield, incidentally. I just hate it when people say that.
Though we are both from the sort of Midlands, north of England, so we have that mentality.
You're from the Midlands. I'm from Bury, which you could have filmed this in Bury, and I will say it probably wouldn't have made that much difference. You would have saved a lot of money on special effects in the latter half, I think.
Oh, quite probably.
Oh dear me. Yeah. So I'll ask, when did you first see this?
Right.
And what was your general feeling about it?
Okay, so this could possibly land me in mild hot water, but I don't really care.
Controversy.
I was told to watch this film by you
Oh.
ever since we were in
I
university.
wasn't expecting you to say it because when I first got to know you, my life changed forever for the worse.
Thank you.
I assumed you'd already seen it.
No,
I
I
just seemed like the kind of person who would have seen it.
I'd heard about it. I'd not seen it. I'd not sat through and watched it. I'd seen clips of it.
We should
and I'd
both
sort of heard
explain
of it.
to the no one who's watching this that
At this point.
that we were both born after this film aired.
Yes.
So we didn't watch it when it first aired.
Yes.
We watched it after the fact.
And we also, just for reference as well, we also both sort of lived together when we were at university, so that's how we both know each other, and also why...
Alright. Don't need a life story.
Let people want to know.
I was born
on
the 6th of September.
in 20 log cabins. No, we lived together in uni, and you recommended the film to me whilst we were going through a Doctor Who marathon. We went through a Doctor Who marathon, by the way. That's...
I cross-referenced the dates incidentally, and Doctor Who was in the hiatus between Twin Dilemma and Attack of the Cybermen when this aired. This has no relevance to what we're discussing, I just thought I'd bring it up.
So he recommended that I go and check that film out, and I put it in my pile of to-watch films, which is ridiculously long at this point. And eventually, one day whilst I was at work, everyone in the office left for the afternoon and left me in charge of manning the phones. And there was a copy of this film on Vimeo, and I literally wasted 2 hours not working, just watching threads. And when they came back in, they wondered why I was really upset.
That's bleak. Look at that. I mean, not even... That's just something really bleak about looking through unfurnished bare flats.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
I mean, I first saw this on Real Player. Remember Real Player back in the day? Real Audio. I used to download Eddie Izzard clip shows of that, and this. And I first saw it when I would have been in high school, so I guess I would have been about 13 actually when I saw this. No 13-year-old should really sit through this. And
I think the opposite. I think all 13-year-olds should be made to watch this film.
Do you know, well, you say that.
I'm actually being completely serious there.
Grain of truth. Definitely.
I think that anybody who holds a position of power should be made to watch this film.
Ronald Reagan's seen it.
Yeah, I think it should be taught in citizenship classes at least, because it's a very important...
Well, you know what, my mate got it shown at his school. They watched Friends, the whole thing, when they were doing nuclear war and physics. And I requested my science teacher to show it, and he actually had to ask the BBC for permission, and they refused.
Oh.
Yeah, because they said it wasn't appropriate for high school audiences. But my mate's school watched it.
Which is very odd.
So it just wasn't appropriate for northern audiences.
Yeah. That north-south divide really does.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's terrible, isn't it?
I'm going to have to go for a minute.
Oh, God.
Because I need to check on something.
Don't leave me flying solo.
Cover for me.
Oh, no. This is deeply unprofessional. First YouTube commentary and he runs off. Oh, well. So yeah, I first saw this when I was about 13, and I think I didn't sleep for about 3 or 4 days. That's not even an exaggeration. It was like, it's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night. And to this day, despite all the sort of light-hearted attitude we're having with this today, it's still probably the scariest thing I've ever sat through, because unlike a lot of horror films, unlike a lot of Hollywood movies, and especially a lot of horror TV shows where you're so distanced from it because it's so over the top and so made up and fictional. And there's nothing really fictional about this. This is a very much what would happen in this situation. What would happen if a great dirty bomb attacked us, if we were under attack? And I've heard people criticise the latter half of the film when we're very, very far into the future and basically society's broke down and language has broken down as being a bit far-fetched or a bit science fiction-y, but I don't think there's anything very... Oh, what a noise. I don't think there's anything really too far-fetched about that at all. Worse things have happened throughout history. I mean, it's just such an obscene thing, such a senseless thing. What's that quote about? What was that quote about the chap who invented the atomic bomb saying he'd become the destroyer of worlds?
I heard something about the destroyer. I joined the conversation a bit later. I'm sorry.
I was being very, very serious then, and then you come in with pizza.
I have pizza. Sorry.
I feel like I was doing a lecture on like nuclear physics, and you go, "Hey, Ben."
I don't want to steal. I don't want to steal a joke.
Party time, are we right?
Then I'm appointing you minister for partying down. I don't want to steal a joke that you made earlier. I don't want to spoil a joke that you made earlier, but when we were going out, Ben has come to my house to record this commentary.
You love telling them every detail of what we're doing.
I do. It's
They're
a good
find
thing.
us.
You're going to find us.
They are going to find us.
You're going to dox us.
They're going to find us.
Going to use the internet.
The atomic scientists.
Anyway, the atomics. Anyway, so Ben's come here to record this, and before we came here, we went and got some supplies because we thought it was going to be a very long night.
Well, this is nearly 2 hours.
This is nearly 2 hours. So we bought pizza because, as Ben said in the shop, we are basically 13-year-olds.
I love how you have to justify why you've bought pizza. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, I'm going to justify. What I was going to say, Ben, is your pizza is done, isn't there? If you want to go and get some, I'll hold the fort for the time being.
Talk about something very interesting and deep while I'm doing that.
So, I've got pizza.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's... To be completely honest, this film is a particularly powerful viewing for me. I remember sitting and watching the actual build-up to this particular section of the film and being very aware at the time that this is a very real possibility. And one of the things that I should really mention is that a lot of this film is based in complete and total scientific fact. This is as accurate to what a bomb falling on Sheffield would be like Thursday, May 19th. It's a very powerful film, and it very accurately depicts what it would be like if a nuclear bomb was to fall in the UK. And in particular as well, I mean, I don't know whether this is specifically dealing with just one bomb falling or whether multiple bombs would fall, because in the event of a nuclear disaster it would be multiple bombs.
Do you know what's funny? We're both saying that it's scary because it's based on scientific facts. We don't actually have those scientific facts to give you because we've not read them.
Wow. Actually, there is a very good document.
Well, we have read them, but not for this.
Not well enough to be able to quote verbatim.
When I first watched this, I read about nuclear war for about a month non-stop. It became a very unhealthy obsession. I have a very... you get those vague memories that you can only kind of recall like a dream.
Yeah.
The day I saw this was the day of my parents' evening at my school. And it was a very bleak, overcast day. It was that kind of blue, evening-ish tint. You know that kind of thing between day and night? I am going somewhere with this.
I hope it wasn't an example of foreshadowing. But Ben's parents' evening, Ben watched Threads. His report was not an update.
Threads was just a metaphor. This is going somewhere. I know it sounds a bit bollocksy, but basically, I watched it on Real Player and I got really upset and depressed and unhappy. And then my dad picked me up and took this parents' evening. And, I always associate that thing of day and night, that sort of blue feeling, with that really worn-out, depressed feeling. And, it was like that for ages. And it doesn't sound good, does it? Because what I'm implying is that every single day I get reminded of Threads, which isn't quite the case, obviously. But I don't think I'd be able to fucking cope if I was reminded of Threads every day.
No, it would be a very bleak.
But we are in this day and age.
Well,
it's more relevant than ever.
Well, one of the things I was going to say was that when Threads went out, it was either preceded or immediately followed after by a documentary from the QED series.
It was a panel discussion.
Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking of another one. It was
Not
QED.
QED. No, that didn't come after this.
Oh, did it come a couple of weeks after?
QED was before this, I think.
Oh, I'm not sure.
They weren't aired the same night.
Oh, I was going to say, because I often go back to that QED documentary. It's on YouTube in full.
QED Guide to Armageddon is basically this, but not in a dramatised form.
It's
just flat out telling you what would happen.
It's wonderfully depressing. If you think that this Danny said this documentary. If you think that this television,
well, it kind of is.
Oh, if you think that this television movie is deeply depressing, watch the QED Guide to Armageddon, because that is based in scientific and documentary based facts.
But don't watch The Day After, which is the Hollywood version of this. It's just they got a lot of mileage out of Johnny B. Good, didn't they?
I think this might actually be the legitimate version of it.
I was going to say it sounds legit, unless the copy was just really accurate.
Maybe they got somebody from the BBC sound department to just sort of bring the guitar in for a day. But the QED documentary in particular is a very, very harsh watch. It's an enjoyable watch because you learn a lot, but what you learn is that basically, no matter what you do, if a nuclear bomb is coming anywhere near where you live, within at least a 100-mile radius of where you live, you are probably going to die a very horrible, painful death unless you've got at least about 20 grand to buy a bomb shelter.
So I always think, you have all these sequences where they're watching the news about what's happening. I always think, what would it be like? Would it be better or would it be worse if they were even more subtle with it? So like, because they're starting to talk about it now, aren't they? Starting to say, oh, good, what's going on in the old Soviet Union and Iran? But what if the characters didn't even like pay any attention? What if the nuclear bomb just happened? Yeah. Because we kind of build up to the nuclear bomb, don't we? We're set up to know that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it still follows those rules of drama where it sort of has to create that suspense.
What if we were just watching a drama like a normal soap, and then out of nowhere a nuclear bomb hits? What if you didn't even advertise that it was a nuclear war film?
I'll tell you what.
So you just sold it as like this drama about Ruth and her partner and Jimmy and having this baby and moving into this flat, and then out of nowhere a nuclear bomb goes off. It'd be amazing. It'd be so effective.
Just got this.
So you don't even advertise that it's about nuclear war. You don't even do any of that. You don't have a big fuck off mushroom cloud on the cover of the video, and
just got the image of Derek and Deirdre sort of sat down for an evening, custard creams on the middle of the table in the middle of.
God.
Oh, shall we put that Threads on, dear? I think that'll be a nice watch. It deals with babies. You like them, don't you?
It deals with babies.
You like them, don't you?
Put that on the video quote. Put on the video quotes like a heartwarming family drama. John Peters, the Daily Star. You know.
More fun than a barrel of monkeys, Daily Express.
A barrel of monkeys would be very fun.
That would be quite amusing.
Jumping about.
Having a right laugh.
Having a right laugh.
You like babies, don't you? Is going to be the video description. I've decided now. By the way, we're going to be a bit silent.
I got into a bit watching it then, just as I was talking.
A mixture of we're both watching it, and also we both have pizza.
Oh God!
And it is very good pizza.
Why did they not hire us to do the Blu-ray commentary? It would have been so professional. Why didn't they hire us?
People were warned. We did put a warning at the beginning. This was not going to be a particularly...
See, I'm starting to watch it. I'm forgetting to talk. Maybe I should just watch and not talk. That might be better for everyone.
Oh, he's in his car.
Good commentary. He's in his car. He's looking out a window now.
Oh, Schwarzenegger does that on his commentaries.
This is not the Arnie commentary for Conan. There is me on the camel. I am now getting off the camel.
What's the fun? Saturday, May 21st.
And John Milius being creepy. But that is not that. This is this. So see what I mean? So the whole nuclear war thing now is really starting to become a big thing in the narrative. It's like... But you see what I mean about what if it was not mentioned up to this point, or very, very incidentally mentioned? I do like those shots of 1980s Sheffield.
I do wonder though whether it's stock footage that they're using here.
Oh yeah.
Or whether it was maybe specially filmed.
No. Stock footage, although there is a bit, I think later on, but I'll talk about that when we get to that bit with the mushroom cloud. But
that is a very plump baby.
Oh.
And this is another thing that would be very similar to what would happen in real life. You could imagine that as tensions rose and the risk of nuclear war became a more predominant possibility, that people would take to the streets. It'd be in vain, but it's a natural human response to sort of think, well, we can maybe change it if we pressure the government enough.
Protest can sometimes mean this film itself an act of protest. And look what happened. Ronald Reagan actually saw this film. He was showed this and he watched the day after. And I mean, I don't want to say that I have it on good authority that they definitely influenced his decisions on cooling Cold War relations, but I like to think that somewhere in his subconscious, when he was watching the scenes of people getting radiation poisoning and burning, that might have, had some bearing on it. I'd like to think so anyway. Because, if a little BBC film that was made for about 250 grand in the 80s could influence world politics, I mean, just goes to show. Never in vain.
I have two questions, really, and I suppose I should probably save my second question till later, but I'm going to ask it now because that's just how it works.
I won't know.
What do you reckon? First question is, what do you reckon that Reagan made to the pissing woman scene?
Well, I mean, I can't answer that because I've not worked with Ronald Reagan.
Do you reckon it was
like I worked with Chuck Berry?
Do you reckon it was a silent surprise, or maybe more of a maybe a verbal kind of reaction?
He might have been blinking while that scene came on.
I could imagine a stony-faced blinking.
It is all very. It does go by very quick. It's almost subliminal. Oh, this is grim. I always find churches very depressing places to be. They don't fill me with hope.
I mean, you did once do a film about a church sort of environment.
Well, the only time I ever went to a church for any reason would be for funerals. So, I don't really associate them with happy places.
That's true. You got a point.
I mean, all this stuff, like the build-up to the attack, a lot of it is very depressing. I mean, just that was just a little tiny scene of people praying in the church, but it says so much. I will also say look how beautifully dark it is.
You won't get that.
Look how almost noir-esque. Look at lighting. It's just so. It's like everything's just been washed out.
You won't get that on the Blu-ray.
That stock footage, incidentally. You won't get what on the Blu-ray?
That nice sort of dark noirish lighting. It'll be there, but it'll be a lot more lighter. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about VHS, and that was one of the reasons why me and Ben compiled this list of films that we thought would be better viewed on tape than, say, in super high quality. VHS has this nice habit of flattening detail and flattening definition and presenting
it's the
darker
difference between
colours.
analog and digital, basically.
Yeah.
It's like people who fight about vinyl and CD. I'm one of those balls who will always argue that vinyl's better than CD. Often to deaf ears.
No, it works. I mean, for me, the reason why I think that this film works better in tape quality than in, say, for example, a super high def version of it, is just simply because it makes the blacks look blacker, the darker colours look darker, and it also softens a lot of the effects, which if you had them in high def might not necessarily be as impactful. Whereas when you sort of soften them and mellow them out through tape, it makes them look a bit more believable, a bit more realistic. And as you say, because this is sort of shot more in the style of a documentary, having it presented on a period authentic medium means it looks that bit more realistic. Whereas if you're watching it with that film grain intact, it looks a bit...
As war just kicked off, I was just trying to follow up the plot. A lad came in and said they started fighting the Russians and the Americans.
I think it's going to be fairly imminent.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen Protect and Survive on yet.
That's not till later. I think it's coming up soon. In real life, I'm pretty sure the Protect and Survive leaflet, you could get the Protect and Survive leaflet. The films were never aired. Well, they were aired, but like as part of Panorama, weren't they? Like BBC got hold of the films and showed it during a program on nuclear war, because there was a lot of programs about nuclear war around this time.
Oh yeah,
it was the thing.
Well, it was a very realistic possibility, and it still is.
My mother told me about. My mother would have been doing her GCSEs around the time this aired, and she told me about a friend of hers who was doing like an English essay, and it was literally like she wrote like, "What's the point of this all? We're all just going to die anyway. The bombs are coming. Why am I even writing this? What's the point?" That was like the mood of the time.
It's interesting to see how... I mean, this was going to be my second question, really, in the sense of, do you think that a modernised version of Threads would work?
There's been attempts. To do like a nuclear attack. But I think the thing is, as much as nuclear war is still a very prevalent thing, it's not so much on people's minds as much. What is on people's minds is everything else. If it's not nuclear war, it's like some new virus, or it's terrorism, which I guess can tie into nuclear war because terrorists get hold of a nuclear bomb, or it's the economy, or it's this, or it's that. Basically, people worry about everything else in the world, and I think you could quite easily do a modern version, and it would be effective.
Well, I mean,
but I think what it'd have to be the same level as this and the same attention to detail, because what makes this work is the fact that it is painstakingly does not compromise. There is no the day after-esque Hollywood moments. There's no riding off into the sunset. There's no sunset. The Russian cloud blocked it out.
It just gets more and more grim until literally the final frames of the film run through, and even then, it ends on its darkest note. It doesn't.
I've seen it a few times. I've seen this a few times since, and I don't think anything could have topped that first time I saw it. On a really shittily compressed real player file, which again added to the grimness. It's almost like you're one of the survivors.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's one of the reasons as well why we chose it to be presented on VHS, because it makes it look that bit more grim. Every tape fault makes it look more like an artifact that survived the explosion rather than...
Saying that though, we are watching this on a sealed VHS, so this is the first time it's ever been played.
And this tape came out in 1987.
Looks good.
It looks surprisingly good for a 30-year-old tape. Well, nearly 30. Well, over 30 years now, isn't it? 2018? 1987? Yeah.
You're not when the tape came out, when the film was aired.
The tape came out in 1987.
Yeah.
So 97, 2007, yeah, about 31 years. This is a 31-year-old tape, then.
I mean, what would you do? What would you do in the situation?
I actually raised that with you the other day. I sent you completely randomly. I sent you a message on Facebook saying, wherever you are now, you've got 5 minutes to prepare for a nuclear explosion. What do you do?
But these people, it's not the same thing, because these people don't have 5 minutes. They have...
seconds, pretty much.
Well, no, they have, like, days.
What?
This whole period takes place over like a week.
Yeah, although I would argue though that apathy is a very...
Looks like people are building up to it. God, can you imagine seeing that?
Can you imagine?
No, just imagine a caption that was like official. There was an official broadcast coming. That would shit me up for any reason.
Straight up, if I was watching telly, to be fair,
if I'm watching Loose Women and suddenly it cuts to there will now be an official announcement.
To be fair, it freaks me out a bit whenever it just swaps to technical difficulties. If a television program has any problems and it just goes black screen and then something pops up.
Like that thing in Hawaii.
Yeah, it just unsettles you.
Can you imagine that? Most people weren't asked.
No.
They're too chilled.
It comes.
Oh, whatever,
That being said though, I did watch a documentary today where they did say something along the lines of Hawaiian people were putting their family into the sewers to protect them from the blast because they thought that they'd be able to survive.
That is grim.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. But
you know what the scary thing is as well is like another thing with this is escalation, because it's not even a war that Britain, I mean, hospitals cleared for expected casualties. Oh god, it's not even a war thing that we start. It's something that in this film, the US and the Soviets are having some disagreement over Iran, and that leads into them having a proper fight, and then we, of course,
get dragged into it
because we have to
because of the quote special relationship.
Yeah.
We could have been friends with France, Ben. We could have been friends with France. They had cheese and culture.
I mean, staring at me so lovingly. Yeah, just all this stuff is really effective. Just this whole atmosphere that's created. Even before the bomb hits, you can tell the country's already in a kind of apocalyptic state. You can almost tell when it's stock footage, can't you? Because the film gets a bit more discoloured.
Yeah. You sort of see that generation drop as it...
Yeah, because they would have had to, I guess, sit through hours in the BBC archives just looking for like spare bits and pieces. And
pick a section of tape out, dub it onto another tape, then
what was
take
that
it to...
thing you told me about? Was it in the QED doc where it was that minister who was being interviewed and he was saying something about how in a nuclear war I would have emergency powers to basically execute anyone I want?
That was...
You were telling me about it ages ago.
Yeah.
Was it in the QED doc?
No, it wasn't the QED doc. It was... was it The Eighth Day?
The Eighth Day?
There's a documentary, I think, called The Eighth Day, and it deals a lot more literally with what goes on, and that is a very...
Central Services, that was a Brazil-esque thing.
There's a very creepy moment where, as Ben says, a reverend sort of turns up and
it's a minister, isn't it? Like a Tory minister.
And
assuming he's Tory, because he's evil.
And they sort of ask him, you know, in the event of a nuclear war, what sort of powers would be bestowed on you? And he effectively said, well, in my capacity, as soon as the bombs drop, I'm effectively judge, jury, and executioner of anybody and everybody who comes into contact with me.
He said it so coldly.
Mm.
He was so, like, not relishing it, but, like, matter of fact about it.
Mm.
It's like, if I want to decide to kill you, then...
You're dead.
There you
Sorry.
go, there you go, mate.
You're gone. But I think one of the things that is arguably very true, not necessarily about this documentary, but about humanity in general.
This documentary, you said it again.
This TV movie. it's technically shot like a this is the problem. It's so convincing in the way that it's shot and framed. A docudrama would probably be.
Well, I mean, it's shot like a lot of BBC things at the time. Well, I mean, I guess that what helps is that it is shot like very guerrilla. The we were saying before, it's like you're one of the survivors. The camera's just roaming around these things, very dispassionately observing it.
You sort of pick up on all the different sort of class systems. You sort of see the working class, and then you sort of follow the ministers a little bit, and they're the upper class.
Can you imagine if they'd have shot it like... Because this is all shot on, I presume, it's 16mm film.
Yes, it would have been a 16mm.
That's not 35mm, is it?
No, 35mm's a lot sharper and a lot grainier.
Can you imagine if they shot it like the old style of like all the inside stuff in a studio?
Can you imagine if it was shot on Studio VT?
Like Doctor Who, Tales of the Unexpected.
Yes.
Where it's like, you get all the footage of them running outside, and then he cuts and they're in like the television centre.
They walk through a door and they're suddenly on a set, and it's very clearly, obviously a set.
Good lord, I'm on film. How did that happen?
Ladies and gents, this house is surrounded by film.
The stock footage in this is actually worked in very well.
It's quite well integrated.
A lot of these old films that do this tend to... It can be quite jarring, but it's very effective. You don't really think about it, do you? Unless you're a sad nerd.
Yeah. Like us.
Yes, well, I was leaving that without no need to be, what's the word, spoken.
Like us. No, well, one of the points I was trying to say was basically one of the big issues that I think isn't necessarily covered in this, but is a general sort of humanity thing, is humanity as a whole, as far as my experiences have gone, are a little apathetic towards actually putting into action measures unless they're necessary. So, for example, they could be running the Protect and Survive adverts up to 5 minutes before the bombs drop, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people would make plans.
Well, I don't think they really believe that those... I mean, the government, I'm talking about. I don't really believe that they couldn't have believed that those adverts worked.
Well, no.
You know,
Telling
if you're
people
under a bridge, sit under a bridge.
Yeah.
If you're out on the field, just lie on the floor and hope for the best. I mean, it's
Cover your head with a coat, I think it was. And hope
cover your
for
head
the
with a
best.
coat. I think that was actually one of them, wasn't it? Cover your head with a coat.
Take your jacket off and put it over any exposed area of your body.
This is always quite a depressing scene for me. All the painting's been taken off the thing.
That actually links back to that QED documentary, because in that, one of the scenarios that they pose is that a bomb, is that a bomb goes off at the top of St Paul's Cathedral, and they said that a nearby art museum just bursts into flames within 2 seconds of the bomb exploding. All the
So, I
paintings.
mean, that was probably. I mean, I know that Barry Hines and Mick Jackson would have researched this extensively. So I'm guessing that was part of the research. Actually, someone probably said, well, in that case, anything that's like really valuable, like paintings, would be taken out of the country. But where would you take them? Because if World War III is going to break out, where are they going to be safe?
Well, that's the thing. You just have to look at countries that were the least likely to be bombed and hope for the best. But
New Zealand.
Yeah. Australia, maybe.
Well, who knows? I don't think we actually find out what happened outside of Europe and America, really, do we?
So what you're saying is there should have been a Threads 2 that dealt...
Threads 2.
Directed by Lucio Fulci.
Directed by...
Dario Argento.
Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott would have been... he would have made it to Hollywood.
Just... It somehow features zombies. It turns into a Euro horror, basically.
See, that's what would happen if it was like a big Hollywood flick. There'd be zombies at one point.
There'd be survivors who are so destroyed by the bombs and so mentally warped by them that they eat human flesh. That'd be the twist.
It'd be a musical too.
Yeah, there'd be a musical number.
Me and my friend in high school, we once tried to write a musical version of The Woman in Black. You're looking at me as if to say, how did it go? How do you think it went?
If you're joining us, we're doing the commentary for Threads.
Imagine doing a musical this. Oh, there's the thing. There's the protect and survive noise.
Oh, they didn't do the...
They did?
No, they just went... Wow.
Oh.
But they didn't do... I like that bit.
So I know I said this in the other thing we did, but in the War Museum in Salford, they just play those films on a loop, the Protect and Survival films. You can just sit there all day if you want and just watch them going on over and over. I mean, if you're so inclined, it's just to do the thing now. There you go. I mean, because they'd already aired, I think they first aired in about 81, those films. So
10:30 p.m.
by the
Fire
time-
engines deployed to safety.
Yeah. So by the time this was on, people would have been aware of Protect and Survive, wouldn't they? Well, they would have had the leaflet, and they would have had they would have seen the films when they were showing Panorama, and they would have seen Neil painting himself white to deflect the blast. Just gonna get more.
Highly recommended, by the way, if you want a scientifically accurate portrayal of what a nuclear bomb falling on London would look like. Look up the Young Ones episode, Bombs. Highly accurate representation of nuclear
It
war.
would land near Rick Mail's fridge, and then at the end, a little bird would fly out of
It's
it.
an aeroplane.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And a student would try and hit it with a sledgehammer to make it go off.
I wonder how long it would be before he brought up the Young Ones.
Bombs is a very, very funny episode. It
It's
references
got,
a lot of these...
Dex's Midnight Runners in that one.
Yeah, they play Jackie Wilson
said.
Yeah. But they reference, in that episode, they do reference a lot of stuff from this sort of time, like Protect and Survive, and, sort of various
Well,
documentaries
Neil has
and stuff.
that line where he goes, I'm going to get the extremely helpful and informative Protect and Survive manual. And the audience has a very knowing laugh, because what I'm trying to say is, it was in the consciousness at the time. It was like it was a cultural thing.
It was
So
so...
its use in this is it would have sparked something in a lot of people. I mean, can you imagine being in the house one day and seeing those films coming on in the middle of it? There's the actual leaflet.
Yeah.
I only bought it the other day.
I should also say that when Neil says, I will go and get the very handy Protect and Survival guide, he says it with a very distinct lilt of sarcasm. Just for anybody who hasn't seen that episode in particular.
Go and watch it.
Go and watch it. It's very good. What are you doing listening to us if you haven't seen the Young Ones? Go and watch the Young Ones. Infinitely better. I very rarely turn people away from watching stuff that I try and put out, but go and watch the Young Ones if you haven't seen it. It's genuinely one of the most hyperactive and somewhat manic comedy shows the BBC
I
ever
think most
produced.
people who've seen Friends have seen the young ones.
Well, it's quite possible. You never know, though. You never know.
So we're quite close to the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
As one would might say.
So Ben, how do you plan on spending emergency powers, non-essential phones disconnected?
You know, as effective as the nuclear blast in Terminator 2 is in terms of special effects, I don't know. Just something about this just feels a lot rawer to me.
Yeah, it's got more. I think it helps that it's of the era that it's of, and also that it's shot very guerrilla filmmaking style. It's not polished. It's not trying to be perfect. They don't show the.
It's not Linda Hamilton's skin being ripped off.
Yeah, I think they show a very fleeting blink and you'll miss it shot of the blast itself, and then the majority of it is reaction.
Well,
which
a lot of those shots are very quick because they want to get like the madness of what's happening, the chaos.
Yeah, it's very much show don't tell. They don't show you the blast, but they show you how people react to the blast.
Well, they tell. Actually, it's show and tell this, isn't it? Because they have those captions that come up that are just like. Because, like we were saying, this is as much an education as it is a drama about some characters. Not to devalue the drama that's going on, or to devalue the story that's going on, but it's like this. The point of the film is not to tell a story about a family. The point of the film is to say, why do you think we'd win a nuclear war? Of course that wouldn't happen. That's what Mick Jackson's actual quote was, I believe. That he said that what made him want to do the film was that he was hearing all these people on the news, all these pundits saying, well, you never know, we could win a nuclear war if we really tried. And he was thinking, I mean, are you for real? I mean, that's
actually mad.
That would not happen. That would just... He collaborated with Barry Hines, who wrote Kestrel for a Knave. You know, apparently they didn't get on, Barry Hines and Mick Jackson.
Really?
Well, from what I read somewhere, completely unconfirmed, but that because Barry Hines has a very working class background and Mick Jackson has a very middle class background, and they clashed on that basis. Look at that! I love that shot with all the TV show Protect and Survive. See, now imagine that, in like Curry's or something, PC World. Now, man, these days they wouldn't do it like silly 80. I think they'd still be pretty cheap, and all accused of people getting money out. Yeah. But what good would money be?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
No more yeah.
I think that, and I mentioned this sort of in passing at the beginning of this, and I think it does bear repeating. I think that a lot of people nowadays don't really understand the full ramifications of what nuclear war is. I think that they have memories, a particular generation of people have memories of things like Vietnam and World War II and stuff like that, and they assume that it would be very similar, and it wouldn't.
Yeah. It's like, I assume people listening to this have probably seen When the Wind Blows. The whole point of that is that it's this old couple who really believe that it's going to be like the Second World War again, where it's like, okay, we all buckle down, we all get together and build a shelter and get the tins and it'll all be alright. And of course it's not alright because, as bad as the Blitz was, I mean, it's nothing on a hydrogen bomb.
Yeah. The only nuclear tests the only nuclear
what
weapons
it must have been like to film this. All these people running about. It must have been very tricky.
It must have been very difficult to direct this particular, and I must sort of take my hat off to the director of this film in particular. He's
just think how quickly life can change like that.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic
in a flash.
job. Single warhead explodes high above North Sea. Energy pulse burns out many electrical systems.
Life that you've known until that moment, and it changes forever.
Fundamentally,
that is the scary bit.
It's a very from here on in, this is probably going to become very bleak. By the way, because
it started to become bleak. It started bleak, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be a fair warning. Though I'm assuming you've probably seen Threads if you're looking at a commentary of two people.
I only watch things when people talk over them first.
Fair dues.
It's a general rule of mine.
No, I remember watching a documentary quite recently where they said that this is my favourite scene. People
in
often
the toilet.
People often rate pissing woman as the best scene in this film.
So that was that mushroom cloud is obviously not stock footage because they had to have the Sheffield. Oh, there she is.
There she is. Hello.
That's her IMDb credit, by the way. One of the pieces of her only IMDb credit. So that mushroom cloud obviously was not stock footage because they had to have the Sheffield backdrop. So they had to let off a real smoke bomb. Now, can you imagine, right, being in Sheffield and just maybe not being aware that there was a film being made nearby and seeing a mushroom cloud-shaped smoke bomb going off? Can you imagine what might occur? Because it did.
Off topic slightly, I remember watching the special features of, again, I'm such a nerd, watching the special features of Remembrance of the Daleks, the Sylvester McCoy Doctor Who story. And in that, there's a scene where a Dalek gets blown up, but they overestimated the explosives used to blow it up, and it ended up creating a massive mushroom cloud. And people actually did call in to the police to register that there'd been a mysterious explosion. And
do you know what? When I was at my dad's years ago, and there was a factory opposite near where he used to live that was being demolished, and it just had to produce a mushroom cloud, didn't it? And it went up, and I don't think I'd actually seen Fred's by this point. I was very young, but even that image alone was enough to create a chill.
Oh, I can imagine.
I obviously hadn't seen Fred's. God, I would have been about 7 or 8, but even that was like, even that imagery is just enough to create fear in people who are even too young to understand.
That's the thing.
Just a subconscious thing.
And it's sort of...
Or a cultural thing.
And
you gotta think, I mean, this has only happened twice in the history of the world. I mean, like, a nuclear bomb being used for the purposes of war.
It's nowadays, and as well as that, it should be mentioned that they were single-use bombs, whereas in modern campaigns, there'd be likely to be dozens of them, if not hundreds, launched at a particular country. And also, that the megatonnage, is that the right word for it? The megatonnage?
No, but it should be, because it sounds cool.
It does. The megatonnage of contemporary warheads is 10 to 50 times more strong. I think there's one called the Tsar Bomber, which is a ridiculous... It's like 100 times stronger than the bomb that fell in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I'm nodding.
And just one...
That won't get over on audio, but I'm nodding right now.
Just one of those bombs. Oh, this is bad. I love that effect.
Flash. Oh, yeah.
That really weird sort of inverted colour effect.
I believe there's a shot that we just missed of an E.T. doll being burned.
There it is.
Oh, no, yeah. See, that was intentional on the part of Mick Jackson. He wanted to get across that this is not Hollywood. Like, by burning E.T., that's like his symbolically saying, look, this ain't the day after, alright? This is like...
This is the real deal.
This is what would happen. This we're watching now. I don't mean what would happen is that a load of stock footage would blow up, but... You know what's funny, right? If you were to analyse this from an editing point of view, that sequence then is pretty much just a sequence of stock footage, but it completely works.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
It's not like Ed Wood.
People don't care about the small details, they only want the big picture. And
now if Ed Wood had directed this, it would have been very entertaining.
I would probably be reviewing that on my channel right now. That would have probably been episode 1, the Ed Wood apocalypse.
Starring Tor Johnson as Gorbachev.
So they're going to go starring Tor Johnson as pissing woman.
No, Johnson would be Gorbachev, and Thatcher would be played by Vampira.
But yeah, well, that would make sense. So yeah, this is...
well, you know, bit of tangent here, but the 50s was a very scary time for nuclear paranoia and fear, so it's been a decent time to make it.
The mid-50s was the closest official time that we've ever... Oh, that's sad.
No, is the cat... What's happening with the cat? Is he dying?
Yeah.
Well, stupid, we're all dying.
But... if the bomb didn't kill him, the fallout will.
Yeah. That's why those protect and survive films are so not good, because I know they have a whole thing where they talk about fallout, how it's not safe to go outside, but really, I mean...
I love the use of silence in this as well, I should say.
Yeah. Like, just now when it was just... The guy putting his wife out, putting her out of fire, and it was all silent, and it was all very... You know all about this as well? There's no there's no music.
Yes.
Like, there's no non-diegetic music. It's all
actual audio as it happened.
Well, this has worked with the score.
No.
No.
It would have added too much.
It would have disconnected you from it.
It would have been too disconnecting. It would have been too schmaltzy. You would have had to. You couldn't have. The two extremes you could have gone to is you could have either have had a generic but upbeat soundtrack, which would have been awful, or you could have gone for.
I mean, When the Wind Blows had a gorgeous score, but that was trying to do a different thing. When the Wind Blows is. Have you seen When the Wind Blows?
No, actually, not all the way.
It's a very arty piece almost. It's very like, well, it's animation, so it's by its very nature arty. But there's some really nice music in that. David Bowie did the title song for that. Either him or Roger. Yeah, no, David Bowie did the title song, and Roger Waters did some songs for it as well. But that is not what we're watching. We're watching this. So let's keep talking about this.
Fun fact, third-degree burns happen within the first 10 kilometres of a nuclear explosion. And also, if you get third-degree burns on more than 24% of your body, you're pretty much likely to die.
You've done your homework.
Yeah.
That must have been a fun reading.
About
third-degree burns.
Everyone knows that, surely.
That must have been a fun afternoon.
Yeah. Second-degree burns are not as life-threatening, but will still require some skin grafts. First-degree burns are on the equivalent of a very bad sunburn.
I don't think there's any first-degree burns going on here. Do you know what they use for the burn effects?
Go on.
Rice Krispies.
Really?
And ketchup.
I would not have suspected that, to be fair.
Watch these harrowing scenes now and imagine their faces just with Rice Krispies and ketchup.
I would just say the thick of it's let itself go. I mean, we spoke earlier.
Just watching it then. We go to watching it.
Yeah, when it gets particularly harrowing, it's very hard to,
But we'll manage.
Yeah, we'll struggle through. One of the points I was sort of talking about earlier was whether Threads would work in a contemporary environment as a remake, and I think.
Well, maybe not a remake as such, but like a film that tries to do the same kind of thing about Britain being attacked by nuclear weapons.
And I think that it wouldn't necessarily work for two reasons.
What if you did it like you're gonna groan at this. What if you did it as like a found footage thing, where
I wouldn't be against it if it was done appropriately. If it was done, I mean, if anything, that would be something that worked to its favour, because with the rise of social media and sites like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and things like that, I've just terribly dated this because probably in 10 years none of those will exist anymore. But with the rise of social media, you could realistically put together a drama that was entirely made up of footage that was uploaded to those sites. So you would have a very fragmented narrative that was only pieced together by what people managed to upload to the servers before the bombs dropped.
like a real-time kind of thing.
Yeah, so you could maybe start off with a vlogger sort of talking about her day as she walks through.
Are you talking about, just to clarify, are you talking about actually doing it as if it was a vlog? So people have to go on this website and see this real thing that's happening?
It would be pieced... What I would imagine it would be like is it would be a pieced together sort of documentary, probably presented from a government standpoint, in a similar way that Protect and Survive was pieced together by the government to sort of show the effects of a nuclear explosion.
Right.
They would pool together what was left of the servers that contained information relating to the explosion. So you maybe have quite a bit of footage sort of dealing with the build-up to it. So maybe people vlogging about how nuclear war is a very real possibility and sort of vlogging about their day, going about their business. And then when the actual bombs dropped, I imagine there'd be at least half a dozen people who'd pointed their phones at the explosion before it got them. There's got to be somebody who'd hold their phone. There'd be somebody who'd go, right, this is going on YouTube.
I don't want to be one of those old people like millennials always got their phones out. But yeah,
somebody would.
That's basically true.
And then equally, there must have been at least a few mobile phones that would have survived the explosion. So what you could have done is pieced it together based on footage that was found on phones that were recovered from, post-explosion, and then piece together the majority of the beginning based on social media. So Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook sort of clips. Very brief excerpts of different people's lives up and down the country, sort of culminating in this big...
You know,
Ben, why haven't we made this?
You know another thing I like? Because we're saving all our good ideas for when we don't have a microphone.
I thought you were going to say we're saving all our ideas for the Threads commentary.
No, we're saving all our good ideas for when we don't have a microphone pointed out so people can't steal them.
True.
But, you know, one of the other things I like about this is the fact that a lot of things would probably have naturally ended it at this point when the bombs finally hit, and then this just keeps going on and on. And there's an idea that I think would be really cool. I mean, they never considered it. I just think it would be cool if they put like an incorrect running time on the video case, so it would like completely destroy your sense of when this thing was going on, because you're like, okay, things cannot get any worse, and then it keeps going. Now things can't get any worse, and then they just keep going and going, and then it's like the nuclear bomb has almost like destroyed the BBC schedules as well as destroyed the world, you know.
Yeah. Sunday, May 29th, attack plus 3 days.
They're going to suffocate.
Which is a very depressing thing.
Oh god.
But technically they're the man, so it's okay.
Do you think they get it the easiest?
They
don't have to.
Arguably.
They don't have to put up with the destroyed Earth above.
They don't have to see the horrors of what's happened above. They don't have to struggle because they've got enough supplies to last them until they suffocate to death.
Yeah.
They are aware that there is bad stuff happening above the surface, but they're unable to do anything about it realistically because their phone lines are dead. They can maybe organise basic sort of positioning of military, and that's kind of as much as their extent goes, really. Sorry, I got off my point for a second. What I was trying to say was that I don't think that a modernisation of something like this would be particularly different from this. The only thing that would really be majorly different is the technology would probably be miniaturised and or updated to look a bit more modern.
Yeah.
But realistically, even if a bomb
Same
dropped...
basic story.
Yeah. Well, for example, mobile phones wouldn't work after this because the explosion would knock out not only phone masts and phone towers, but also it would make Wi-Fi almost impossible.
I guess that defeats our point we made earlier about people taking selfies.
Well, no, what I was suggesting...
selfies with the mushroom cloud behind them.
What I was suggesting was that...
Pull your face there for anyone who can't see us, which is all of you.
What I was suggesting was that maybe they'd pull the media from surviving servers up to the point of the blast, and then after the blast, any footage that was found would be recovered from phones that were found with the victims.
Bit we were talking about earlier, where the government would just be full of sadists who are like, I can kill people, but will.
So we will.
No food distribution likely.
They just seize houses and stuff like that.
Now, is that miniature work that was done there?
Yes.
That little shot of the smoky house.
That was a model.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out as well is when...
That was very protect and surviving, but like better. Like better production values. Not the budget for protect and survive.
I suppose we may never know.
This was like, I was reading that this cost somewhere in the region of 250 grand to produce, which is even for then an extraordinarily cheap amount of money. I think, although I still think the average Doctor Who episode around this time cost about 5p, so that just goes to show the effect of it.
The perspective. I seem to recall reading somewhere, and I may be wrong with this, but I recall...
Yes, you may be wrong.
I may be wrong.
You're always wrong.
I may be right. I'm not breaking into a public image song here. But I seem to recall somewhere reading that once a nuclear bomb dropped, the dust that would be blown into the atmosphere would manually lower the temperature by about 9 degrees. So depending what season the bombs landed, if it landed in winter and it was 0 or 1, it would be -9, -10 at a minimum.
Well, nuclear winter. I mean, that's where that comes from, isn't it?
Pretty much.
You can clarify anything you say. We can say by just beginning the quote with "I read somewhere."
I read somewhere. I'm not.
That distances us from the
from responsibility,
from the things we're saying that we're not sure about.
Yeah. I heard off someone.
Oh, someone else said it. I read it. I didn't say it. I read it.
I don't know nothing or nothing.
Dan,
but
you don't read.
I don't read. I admire.
Aye. admiring. Oh, lovely grim shots there of the destroyed city. You know, I wish I could watch this again with my teenage eyes and not have to sit here and be like, "Oh, that's a really nice model shot. Oh, that's some really nice smoke special effects." I'm sitting there now, like before when I was like, "Oh, I wonder how they filmed all the riot stuff." I just wish I could watch this again and kind of like not go through all that and just enjoy it as like, well, not enjoy it, be terrified by it.
You see, for a second, I thought you were going to say that you were going to be quite optimistic, and you were going to say, "I wish that I could have watched this again through teenage eyes and appreciated that this was a very far reality from what is actually currently happening."
Because it's just as relevant today as it is now. Just relevant today as it is now. It means what it meant. It means what it means.
It's just as relevant today as it is now.
Yep. You heard. I said what I meant.
I should also mention we have been eating pizza whilst going through this. You probably heard very vicious and quite disgusting chewing noises, but
quite enjoyable.
Mm.
I do ASMR video.
You know,
because this is me eating pizza while watching 1980s television.
Because there's nothing quite as good as eating pizza whilst watching people literally starve and suffocate to death.
He looks like Robbie Coltrane.
He does look a bit like Robbie Coltrane. You know, we've gotten nearly an hour into this and we haven't actually told people what we're drinking.
Jack Daniels, if you must know.
Ben is a big Jack Daniels fan.
They don't need to know. You don't need to tell people everything.
You can send your
We're sitting in a room. The walls are grey, wallpaper pattern. Sitting on a couch with a lovely pattern. Daniel's address is 42 Robinson.
You can send your complimentary Jack Daniels bottles to Ben Boss.
P.O. Box. Gotta let people have mystery.
P.O. Box 422, London W1A 6LB.
Gotta let people have mystery. Isn't that where Votan?
You can call Ben to talk about his Jack Daniels.
Wasn't that Votan's address that you just gave?
I think it might have been, actually. It's ingrained.
No, Votan lived in the post office tower.
Yeah.
He lived in.
He lived in...
It was his house.
Alongside Metal Mickey.
Alongside Metal Mickey.
You can
but this is not the War Machines. This is Fred's. So let's.
I think you'll find, Ben, that Fred's is the War Machine.
Well, the War Machines was Fred's. We've not talked about. There's another precursor to this, called the War Games, which or the War Game, sorry, which not the Matthew Broderick film. Have you seen the War Game?
I have not. I keep an eye on something that I still need. I've got When the Wind Blows on my wish list on Amazon.
The War Game is like it's very similar to the QED thing, but it's dramatised as well. It's like a 40-minute thing about a nuclear attack on I think somewhere in London, and it's very grim and very harrowing. It was actually it was made in 1965, but it wasn't actually shown until the year before this because the BBC refused to show it at the time.
Really?
Because they thought it would cause mass suicides. So, they changed their minds because Peter Watkins, who directed it, submitted it for an Oscar, and he won for best short film.
It just goes to show you that accolades will get you anywhere.
Well, you don't want to say you don't want to show an Oscar-winning film, do you? So,
I'm drinking Smirnoff.
Is that because does that tie in with the Soviet theme?
Yes. That was exactly what I was thinking when I
I'm drinking Jack Daniels to tie in with the Texas theme.
The fact that it was the US-Soviet conflict.
Do you remember the bit where they were in the Wild West?
Yeah.
Do you remember the bit where they're on horses?
Yeah, and they all go yippee whippy.
And they were like, yippee ki. Oh, fucking hell. Not a big Western fan, really. Couldn't tell you any iconic words.
You haven't quite Die Hard.
Maybe. Oh, hang on, that's technically quoting a Western in that, so I'm technically right. Yeah, he's quoting a Western, Die Hard.
Sunday, June 5th, attack plus 10 days.
But this isn't Die Hard, this is Fred's. Oh, look at that.
That is a beautiful shot. They're great.
Well, these are all photographs, but like, wonder how they got these, like, I imagine mocking up a lot of these ruined up towns and cities must have took a bit of work.
Pretty much. I mean, if anything, I would argue that Threads is very liberal with its idea of how many bombs would fall in this particular radius, because
Sheffield would be a target because it's an industrial. So.
Yeah, although it's implied in threads that a single bomb fell in Sheffield and single bombs fell in London and other various areas up and down. I think they mentioned Buxton at some point.
It's bomb. Basically, the Russians or whoever dropped bombs all over the country, not just Sheffield.
But the reality of the situation is that probably each of these major cities would probably have about 16 to 17 bombs each dropped on them.
So,
this
pleasant dreams.
Yeah, pretty much.
Look at that image just there, and then mull on what you just said, and then that should give you an idea.
If anything, I think they're being a bit too lenient. I don't think the buildings that are left standing would be standing. I think it would just be dust.
Yeah.
I will also say
be a desert.
The
Have you seen
VHS
that footage of the 1950s test footage of they've got like a mock-up house.
Yeah, it sort of implodes.
It just turns to dust immediately.
It smokes and then falls down.
Yeah, I went for a period, probably about the same time I watched this, of just watching those 1950s all that test footage. It's fascinating viewing, but very scary. Like you ever seen that famous one? They use it on like everything, if they want to show footage of a mushroom cloud, of the boat being overtaken.
Yeah.
Of the mushroom cloud completely. I always think, what would it be like if you were sat in that boat, in that navy carrier, and you had to see the water literally like go into the sky and then come down on you. Just imagine that for a second. That is grim. But no, don't imagine that. Imagine this. Imagine walking around. Faces. So you wouldn't want to survive.
So we're currently
want to survive. You'd probably want to be one of those charred corpses. At least you wouldn't have to put up with all this hideousness.
That's the thing. The majority of these dramatizations and also documentaries, the point of all of them were basically, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, unless you've got a ridiculous amount of money and an underground concrete bunker, you will die, and it will be very painful.
There's the famous shot there.
I will also say the videotape is really bringing out that grimy, found element. It looks particularly nasty watching it in this sort of degraded quality.
I'm glad we're watching it with the lights on.
Can you imagine it with the lights off?
No, don't turn the lights off.
I mean, I don't know whether these people in this particularly would also know the 2-week limitation period on Fallout either, or whether
they
probably
would do if they've had Protect and Survive running all week.
But again, it's a thing for me of whether they've been paying attention to it. It can be
probably
brilliant,
not.
But it's
probably not. Most people wouldn't, or you'd be too panicked to really do anything. I notice it keeps fading to black and then fading up again.
3,000 megaton exchange. Smoke produced 100 million tons. Dust lifted into atmosphere 500 million tons.
Hanging in the atmosphere, the clouds of debris shut out.
It just becomes QED at this point, doesn't it? Guide to Armageddon. Is that the same voiceover, Patrick Allen? No, Patrick Allen.
No, it's a different voiceover, I think, for it.
Not Patrick Allen. No, he did Protect and Survive.
I will say though that for this tape's first ever playing, it's actually remarkably held up well for a 30-year-old tape. That's
it's been well looked after.
Well, it was sealed when we got it, so you sort of look at the desolation. To be completely honest with you, if I knew that a nuclear attack was incoming, I don't think I would hang around.
It's funny. I just had a. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about. I wish I could watch this again through my bright and beautiful teenage eyes. I had a thought just then of this sequence. I was thinking, it's dragging a bit. This, and I thought, well, it's supposed to drag. That's kind of the point.
The nuclear apocalypse wouldn't be a.
I had my just like watching a film head on, and I was just like, this bit's dragging.
I'll also say I think they're being a bit generous with the mob there. I think there'd probably be about 4 people.
No, they're all dead.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a bit generous, sort of implying that there is a crowded mob.
No,
trying to break
there'd
in.
be quite a few survivors, but they just wouldn't last long after the fact.
Well, they certainly wouldn't have the energy to be trying to push through the gates. They'd probably be sort of slumped over.
They'd have the anger.
Oh yeah, but it's whether they'd be able
that
to.
That can be a very strong motivating factor. Those guards shoot on them, don't they?
Yes, they do. I think the most harrowing scene in this film, for me at least, is coming up actually very soon. The hospital sequence.
Oh, that's near the end, isn't it?
No, I think it's actually quite soon. Not the hospital sequence with the birth. The hospital sequence. Spoilers. The hospital sequence. The hospital sequence where they're just trying to.
Alert.
Spoilers. Where they're just trying to treat people.
Oh yeah.
And you sort of seen the futility of it. Speaking as somebody who is currently residing in the UK, the health system here is
currently like you're planning on leaving soon.
Well, depending on what happens with the bombs, I might be moving to the North Pole very soon.
You're not allowed to leave.
Oh yeah, Brexit. Shit. Why did we do that? This sequence here. This is the scene that I found the most harrowing.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
Because it's just
Look at that.
so. Speaking as a UK resident who hasn't used the NHS as much as really he could, it's very reminiscent of certain current times.
But you've never had to use the NHS in a wartime condition.
Well, no, but they're already incredibly understaffed, and they don't have.
Are you
the
trying to
resources.
draw a comparison between these scenes and current NHS conditions?
Well, when you consider that
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but what I would say is that current waiting times are 12 hours.
Yeah, but it's also not full of people with nuclear burns.
I don't know. You're gonna probably get a fair few burns people through.
I know that they're pretty overstaffed. I don't think it's this bad though.
No, I wouldn't. Not for
They're not cutting people's limbs off with no anaesthetic.
Not for a second would I say that this is the current. This is how the NHS looks currently, but certainly if a nuclear attack was to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, but you could have the best health service in the world, and I think it'd still be pretty similar to this.
This is true.
Because you have to treat virtually the entire surviving population. I mean, who'd be left to even do the?
Well, that's the thing as well.
The operations.
You'd have to. I mean, this is the vaguity.
I'm guessing those nurses in this scene were like being held by the government for this situation.
Well, I was going to say that's the vagueness of.
Because there was a text before about how the hospitals were being cleared for when this would happen.
I was going to say, I mean, that sort of leads into the vagueness of Protect and Survive, because they mention specifically that care homes and hospitals will have their own plans on how to deal with this, but they don't go into detail on what those plans are.
Well, that's classified.
Well, yeah, but I can't imagine them building a giant underground bunker for all the nurses to go and hang around in whilst the bombs
Probably
drop.
not. A nice, air-conditioned, well-ventilated, heated bunker.
They'd probably have a cupboard somewhere.
Yeah. And that's generous.
That's why I said this scene is probably
That shot of all the blood dripping down the stairs.
That was why I find this scene probably the most harrowing, is just listening to the screams and the sort of pained. This entire sequence is just.
Wonder how they got those kids to cry.
It was the 80s.
Just the fact that it was the 80s.
Probably,
all kids were crying.
Probably just stabbed them with a pin or something.
Cry on camera now.
Yeah, it was a different time.
The time that you weren't around in.
Time that I wasn't around in. But if I was around in it, I'd probably be stabbing children with pins.
Oh, well, but I'm glad we have that on record.
Can we get that on record, please?
Okay. All this talk that they're having now of trying to rebuild everything.
It's strangely reminiscent of the current Conservative Party.
It's like now.
500 calories wouldn't keep a fly alive. Well, some of them will die. Tory Party, modern day.
Again, this is not modern day. This is 1984.
And it's strangely reflective of the modern day.
I thought you were going to say something worse then.
Go on.
I thought you were going to say, yes, like 1984, the novel.
Ah.
That's another thing that annoys me. We're in the world of 1984 now. It's more prescient than ever.
Probably not that extreme, but...
As much as I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, I know that people were like, I noticed that 1984 went to the Amazon bestseller list when he became president. And I was like, well, what's the connection? He's not really done anything that's like Orwellian. He's not put cameras in everyone's house.
I would suggest it's just the idea that people saw him as a dystopian figure and immediately assumed...
Maybe he should watch this.
Oh, that would be amazing.
He tends to be he's very impressionable. Like, he always seems like he's always directly influenced most by the last person he spoke to. So if he watched this, it might change his mind about trying to, like, you know...
We've hit the politics section.
Trying to taunt Kim Jong-un on Twitter
about
whose red button is bigger.
I think
he should definitely watch this, and then stupid git might have some idea about.
That's the depressing part of it. I think he would dismiss it. I don't think that he would watch this and think that it could actually happen.
Well, do you know what his favourite film is?
Go on.
It's Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Or is it Blood Rain? I don't know. Blood something.
I'm gonna have a look at it up.
He used to. He would apparently rewind to all the gory bits and just skip all the talky bits. So I imagine if he was watching this, he'd fast forward through it.
Well, there was that famous
See if there was
newspaper.
any pussy.
There was that famous Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, 1988. There was that famous news report where they said that he couldn't read a dossier that was more than 10 pages long without getting bored or drifting off. So I imagine he'd probably get to the bit with the pissing woman and then he'd just stop.
He probably wouldn't have got this far.
No. But I think he would dismiss it. I think most people would dismiss this. I think most people who watch this as a contemporary thing would look at it and go, that couldn't happen in real life. Or it wouldn't happen that way in real life. And I think that they'd be wrong. I think that this is actually more accurate than you'd think.
Last time it aired was in 2003 on
Threads Night.
BBC. on BBC 4.
Oh dear.
I have vague memories of it being on.
As mentioned at the top of this, Threads is available both on VHS, DVD by BBC, and has recently been released on Blu-ray by Severin Films. Would you say somebody should watch this?
You should probably buy the Blu-ray instead of listening to us go on about it. But I mean, I don't think I'll see. That's the thing, though. I don't even think I'll buy the Blu-ray because I don't want to own this. I don't want to have it in my house.
It's you've got to be in a particular mood for it. It's not something that you just go, ooh, I'm going to watch Threads tonight.
Well, you did today.
Well, we decided a while ago that this needed to be done.
Nothing we do needs
So
to
remember
be
rightly, Ben, you turned to me and you said, Dan, we have to do a commentary for Threads right now, right this second.
Yeah,
Sit down.
No meaning since the attack. The only viable currency is food, given as reward for work, or withheld as punishment. In the grim economics of the aftermath, there are two...
What do you think of all this stuff with like the still pictures as the transitions?
I think
I like it. It's like it gives it that kind of again that documentary air in it, of like you're watching like it's almost like even though this is set in the past, you got to imagine that we're like watching it from like beamed in from the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's another reason why I think that a remake or a modernisation of this wouldn't work. I think that they would rely too heavily on music stings to try and swell up emotion. I think they'd rely too heavily on special effects to try and sell the damage.
The nuclear explosion would be like very CGI, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would be basically like a kind of cheapo version of the Terminator 2 scene with Linda Hamilton, which I mentioned before. I always think about that because I always think that like it's very impressive visually, and I'm really a big fan of that sequence because I think that for a big stupid action film, it does have quite some nice things to say about nuclear war. But this is I'm always going to prefer this. This is the rawer version. I like how the video game still works.
If anything, that gives credence to my idea that mobile phones would survive the explosion, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to access the internet.
Well, it's just look at the drawing in it. If something works, it works. If it doesn't.
In a modernisation version of this, that old man would be playing Flappy Bird. I hope you realise the brevity of that situation.
Wow! Imagine your last actions on this world playing Flappy Bird.
Well, Flappy Bird's actually probably a bit dated now. What's a modern game that these young kids play? Snapchat. They play on the Snapchat there.
Tekken.
They play on the Tekken. Disposable bodies, no spare fuel. Something or else.
No spare
fuel for bulldozers.
Bulldozers. Not
Wasteful of manpower to dig pits by hand. I don't think they'd do this either. I don't think they'd use photos in a modernisation of this.
No,
I think
no.
they'd rely on.
Did you see that thing then about unburied corpses? 20 million. Now just picture that. Let that sink in.
What I need to reinforce here is
that officer with the bandage on his face. He was that guy. He was on the cover of the Radio Times. Remember that famous image
for the week that this one went.
For the week this aired, yeah.
I think Charlie Brooker went as him for Halloween one year.
Yeah, he did.
Which was quite nice. The thing that sticks in my mind whenever I watch this is that deep down I know that there are people out there who actively want this to happen.
People who run countries.
People who
have the power to do it.
Or people who don't realise the full ramifications of it. There are people who are actively vying for a nuclear war just so it's over and done with.
Fucking hell, man. Did you see those idiots who were on when Jeremy Corbyn was it like a question time debate thing?
And they were like, "Would you push the button?"
Yeah. Why won't you push the button? I want you to push the fucking button. I want death.
As if doing that's gonna solve anything. It's just
as if it's gonna make the penises fucking bigger. Red-faced Tory morons. See them live through this and see how they feel about nuclear war.
I don't think that it would bother them. That's the biggest thing. I think that they'd probably be the kind of people who would top themselves before it would get to the point where they'd be unhappy.
Well, you kind of want to top yourself after all this.
I have always been, again, I don't want to get too grim and too dark with this, but I've always been fairly adamant.
I think this is the film to do it.
I've always been adamant that if I knew that a nuclear attack was going to happen, and I was adamant that there was no way that it was going to be devoided, I would wait until...
Special courts of justice.
I would wait until I could see the explosion, and then I would probably top myself. Because there'd be no...
Oh.
There would be no...
I forgot about all this stuff.
Yeah.
With like people just being,
that's not good.
That is an image and a half, that. You got the corpses, the factory in the background.
I mean, there'd be no reason to live after this, pretty much. The once you know exactly how this would go down, there's
you know, that is spectacularly grim.
That is
basically going back to medieval conditions. But you know, when they shot this, it was actually too nice.
A day.
Yeah, they shot it in like summer, so they had to use like a filter on the camera.
Had to bleak it up a bit.
They had to. Was it day for night?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to shoot day for night because they went there and it was too pleasant, too green and nice, so they had to muddy it up and I think I read something like, "Oh, that snow's fake." They had to lay that down. And Mick Jackson would always apparently was telling the extras off because they were all like you know what you do when you have long days on a film set, and they were just messing about and having a laugh. And he's like, "You're not meant to have a laugh. This isn't a laugh. This is death."
Oh God. I mean, I suppose the question
I like this. Isn't this the bit where he doesn't have a... Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of something else. Never mind, ignore me.
I suppose the question that I would ask you is, would you want to live through this?
He doesn't have a tin opener. She doesn't have a tin opener. Sorry, what?
I was too
busy just fascinated by the tin then.
I was going to say, the question I would ask is, would you want to live through that? I assume the answer is no.
But would anyone say yes?
But would you go to the extreme of topping yourself
yes.
before all this kicked off?
Yes.
Well, at least we've got a
If
mutual
I
agreement.
survive the initial mushroom cloud, then yeah.
I don't even think I'd wait that long. I'd wait until I could physically see the cloud, and then that would be it.
Get a knife and
As
take it
soon
to a wrist,
as-
and that would be the end of that.
Well, I wouldn't even go that far. I'd probably just go for something that was instant. Just, or, you know,
Where would you find a gun?
well, I don't know. Probably, you could probably find some hardware tool or something
Well,
that would do a job like that. This is becoming incredible.
if you go
How
by-
would you kill yourself?
If you go by these,
Oh, the average Brexiteer there.
oh yeah, yeah, because they've been given special powers to basically just take over any property anywhere that's.
Standing.
What? She's still. This. I'm just surprised by at this point there's still police and soldiers, and they're still trying to hang on to some semblance of law and order.
I imagine that there probably would, in the emergency powers, there would probably be some shelter somewhere for military and police personnel. I imagine.
So I guess if you work in the military or a policeman, you've not got it good, but you've kind of got it like.
You're a bit safer than everybody else.
Yeah.
At least to a degree.
Not
I don't
that,
think
not
all
that you're
police-
alright.
Yeah, I don't think all police and all military would be protected, but I think
No.
that a number would be. I would be of the opinion that the military would be protected and that some of the military would be deputised to police officers. And that would be pretty much
Yeah.
how it would work. I don't think that they would actually protect you on the beat Bobby.
No, well, no. But, like you said, there'd be someone knocking about, wouldn't there? Jimmy died, didn't he?
I think he did, yeah. See, that's the thing about this. It jumps so far in time forwards
Yeah.
that you kind of lose track of where you. But then again, that's probably what it would be like.
You follow her, you follow Ruth because you have to follow someone, I guess, but...
I suppose that's one thing. Actually, we've done this entire commentary, and not once have we actually spoke about the characters beyond sort of an outside influence of it. It's not.
Does that say does that say anything about us, or does it say it about the film?
I would say that it speaks volumes.
It's not real, like we were saying. It's not really a film where you see. Look, that shot just then. That always like I had my I wish I could watch it as a teenager because I was watching it and going, they've clearly just shot that in the day and then put a black filter on the camera.
Yeah,
In fact, it
yeah.
looked as if they'd put like a card
Yeah,
and put it on the.
over the top of it.
Yeah.
It's. I think that this film works best.
Does this
when
film
it's-
really have any ropey effects? Like effects that they look a bit rubbish.
I wouldn't be able to tell you without looking at the Blu-ray for contrast, because the Blu-ray would be the best possible sort of presentation
Yeah.
of the footage, whereas this is, if anything, second, maybe even third gen video.
My girlfriend was watching the Mask of Zorro, the Antonio Banderas film
Oh yeah.
from like '98 or whatever, and HD it's basically like becomes the funniest film ever because you can see all the wires, like all of them. Every time someone jumps, it's like watching the Muppets. It's just brilliant.
It's bad to think that realistically they are actually faring better than most people.
Well, they've got some food at least.
They've got food and they've got some quite thick clothing.
Most people are dead, so they're usually probably faring better anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of people don't really think. A lot of people sort of think, oh, well, when the bomb's gone off, whoever's dead will be dead pretty much within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the blast going off. But Fallout arguably kills more people than the blast does. Because the blast is instant and it knocks out a good proportion, but the Fallout will take out people over the course of, say, between 20 and 50 years.
Yeah.
Because it mutates the DNA. The radiation causes the DNA to start unlinking. And
That did look quite appetising.
it leads to an increased risk of cancer and other sort of mutations.
So we're now 4 months after the attack, and things have not improved in any way.
I was expecting a happy ending.
Oh,
I was hoping that everything worked out fine and that
that's what
nuclear
happens
war.
at the end, right?
This is the end of the Conservative version, and the nuclear war ended, and everyone was happy, and there was no trouble ever again,
And it was all alright.
and we all built houses and had jobs. And it was all run under a Tory government. I'll have to do Boys from the Black stuff at some point.
That's about 2% less grim than this.
Remaining population weak, cold, and hungry.
In that order.
Mm. Oh, that's a bad one.
The stills are brilliant. They should bring out like
a photo book or something.
I wonder if the Blu-ray is going to have like a gallery that you can see all these on.
That would be nice.
Like a restored, like all in HD as well.
That's another thing as well, because I assume that this happened in sort of autumn, winter time.
Yeah.
It means that there's no crops, so there's no food.
Yeah.
So everybody is even worse off than they would have been.
I mean, I love these moments where the screen's nearly virtually black.
Yeah.
You can barely make out anything at all, and so yeah, this is what I would have watched when I was 14. It would have bummed me the fuck out.
I'm gonna go get some more pizza.
Right.
I'll be right back.
I'm alright for now. I'm a bit stuffed. All this footage of people eating raw meat and bleeding out of the mouths it's put me off food somewhat, surprisingly. That's right. How long's it been going?
It's started a new track, so I'm assuming that it's been running for a very long time.
Oh. Is that what it does after a while?
I think so. We were just talking about the time code on the microphone that we're recording with.
Don't break the fourth wall.
I have pizza.
Oh. I don't know about pizza. You've said the word pizza more times in this than you've said anything regarding this film.
That is beautiful. I love that shot.
It's like oh, it's gonna sound so pretentious, but it's a bit like those early silent films, early Russian films, where it's all about like these wide, massive shots and like people in rags,
sort of in sepia, just kind of struggling along. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that probably was an influence that went into it. I assume.
I wonder whether they kept pets in storage along with the military.
No, they'd be eaten, mate.
But like that dog looks really healthy.
Yeah, well, that dog's there for a purpose. He's there to keep people away. So look, they'd keep the dog alive.
I had to start eating pizza during the childbirth scene.
But any other animal would it'd be tea.
True. I don't think they'd keep cats, but I'd
Chop.
imagine that the military would maybe keep a few dogs just to keep things.
Your cats and dogs would get chopped up.
Oh. Okay, I'm not eating pizza anymore.
Do you see now why I didn't go for pizza then?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to vodka
Because that's better.
because this is depressing.
That's better for you. Oh, that dog. That dog's probably dead now.
That dog is definitely dead now.
Nice thought for everyone.
If anybody sings Johnny Mathis, I am going to punch them.
The production on that album is incredible.
That is a very obscure reference, and I take my hat off to you, sir.
Oh, that bit always grosses me when she has to bite the cord
I'm going to put the pizza back down
herself.
until she does.
No, she's just done it now. She's done it now, you missed it.
Oh, that's alright then. I'm going to go back to eating pizza.
Alright, thank you for updating us on that. More later.
It's an audio medium, then.
Stay tuned for more pizza updates later.
If they made it this far, they deserve to know
I
what
was-
I'm eating.
I was looking through the Wikipedia summary of this, and oh, it's this bit, yeah. December 25th. Does that shot remind you of anything? It's like the nativity.
Nativity
But I
symbolism.
wonder what the does that really have any relevance to anything, or was that just film school bollocks?
I'd argue probably what the cinematography on that. Or?
Yeah, because it's clearly trying to do a nativity thing.
I imagine it's probably symbolic bollocks. I imagine it's basically them sort of going, this is the new child. This
But what's
is the...
yeah, but what's it got to do with nuclear winter?
Because it's the child has been born, and it's maybe implying that it's going to be the future of mankind, the first...
But as we find out, that is rather not the case.
That's why it's a very bleak shot, in particular, because as it leads on, it reveals that rather than this being the glowing sort of start of something quite wonderful, it's actually a very bleak downward turn from here.
So all this snows was fake.
Really?
Yeah,
What-
I
It
think
is
they said they shot this in a very warm time. So I might be completely wrong there, but I'm pretty sure I read that the snow was mostly fake.
Where did they get a helicopter from?
But if you don't, we're not seeing a helicopter.
Where did they get the giant fan from?
We don't see the helicopter, we just hear it. So they wouldn't have needed to film it.
Well, no, I mean like in terms of in universe.
Oh,
Because
in the film?
I'd imagine all vehicles would either be very low on petrol or
They'd be kept by the military, wouldn't they?
yeah, where are they getting the fuel from?
That's they might be American.
That's the point. But then again, that implies that America survived a nuclear attack from Russia.
No, America didn't survive, but the okay, so it's now 1 year. Ironic poster.
Yeah, nice touch.
That wouldn't have been intact, would it?
No, by that point it would have been torn down,
Oh,
or at least graffitied heavily.
shit film, mate.
0 out of 10.
0 out of 10. Didn't do the poster right.
No
Piece of
buckets
shit.
of popcorn, no bottles of soda.
Rubbish.
Oh boy, a dead rat.
Are they selling the rats?
Yeah, for food.
Oh. Lovely.
I'm still eating pizza. I eat through this.
Stop going on about pizza. Are you pregnant?
A little bit. Just on the weekends.
Cravings. God.
This is some really good pizza.
Guilty eating pizza watching people starved.
Look, I've seen Sarlo and Necromantic. I can eat through
Well, at
this.
least we're getting some sunlight now. Because that will make things better.
No, because it's ultra harsh, which means that it still won't cause it to grow.
Do you know what begs the question? If there's nothing left, who is typing all this?
Well,
In universe, I mean,
I'm going to say Margaret Thatcher from her giant robot.
Jesus.
Her giant robot Jesus.
No, I mean, no, Jesus is typing the text. I
is-
ruined my thing.
that is a beautiful visual image right there. Just like
See, look, now we're 3 to 8 years after the attack. UK numbers may decline to medieval levels.
possibly between 4 and 11.
See, we've
million.
gone from a year to now 3 to 8 years. I love the way it just and now 10 years. Oh, it's nearly done.
Yeah, we're nearly at the end.
Oh. Drags a bit. Well, you know what? Look, I've not watched this in years, and it's a great film, but
I would actually argue the
I
opposite.
think some of it's a bit long.
I would argue the opposite is the case. I've actually thought this film has really zipped by. I only just took a look at the clock, and we've got a massive clock in the corner of the room, and 2 hours does not feel like it's gone by. It really does not.
People have a great visual image of your house and your room now because you just described everything in it.
Got a massive clock and a big piece
Big
of pizza.
fireplace.
I'm sitting on a giant slice of pizza.
There's a little cat statue over the fireplace.
That's a fox.
That's you. Cat. Foxes are not the dogs.
There is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer
Someone was-
poetry, my dear boy.
Someone was saying to me ages ago that they weren't a big fan of this last bit where it's like even language is broken down, and maybe it's not. It's probably the only bit of the film that I think is a little
over.
stretching it, but I think it works on the symbolic level of like because you had the beginning where it was talking about how society, everything has to be connected, otherwise the web breaks.
Yeah.
The spider web breaks. And so because the nuclear attack is basically society is a complete thing of the past, and there's now no more connections or anything, that even something as basic as language has now been reduced to virtually nothing.
So I'm in two minds about it, because
Well, I think it works for what the film's trying to say. I just don't think that
in real life terms, I don't think it would necessarily be applicable. I think that you'd communicate with people too much. Even the people who are around you would talk to them to some degree.
Yeah.
So that looks even better on tape than I imagined.
So this is quite an iconic bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Words and pictures.
That is beautiful.
That's our old.
That's our old uni house, wasn't it?
It's my house. That I live there.
We'll have a roommate come through any minute.
I just sit around watching words and pictures all day.
You say that like that's a bad thing, to be honest. I wouldn't say no. Ah.
So we must have got some basic electricity back to power the video.
Either that or they've learned to hook up.
You'd be alright in this future.
I'd be able to share my copy.
Still got your hipster VCR.
I'd be able to share my copy of Line Dancing Party with anybody who'd care to sit through it.
I love that shot of the woman. She's seen it thousands of times.
I'm not, actually, I don't think I've actually ever looked into it, but I don't think videotapes would survive. Because
they get some basic electricity.
Well, no, I mean, in the sense of tapes rely on a magnetic charge to hold the image together.
Right.
So when a nuclear explosion that puts radiation into the air happens, wouldn't it distort the electromagnetic signal?
Maybe they've got someone under the video spinning their finger really fast.
Ben, I don't think you're really taking this film very seriously.
Well,
I mean, admittedly, you probably have said some of the better points of this evening.
That's not saying much.
But if anything, I think that they may be a little optimistic in this outlook of how society would work. I think that by 2 years in, whatever survivors are left would not be functional.
Are you basing that on what the nuclear technology is like now?
Yes. So, in a contemporary environment.
Yeah. See, we're now 13 years ahead.
Well, from the events of...
This is what I mean about why they should put... I'm thinking about the old trains. See, it does get a bit...
far-fetched.
Science fiction-y for me.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not an expert, as this commentary has proved.
I'll put a little... I'm going to put a little stamp up, possibly, saying we're not experts.
I just want to make that clear for anyone who is in doubt. But... I mean, the shots with like the old mines and the old railway steam trains were implying like, oh, we've gone like we've kind of travelled back in time now. We're like going back to pre-Victorian technology. But
I mean, I think, as you say, the argument about sort of language breaking down.
They're not clothes.
But yeah, actually, that's a good question. How come their clothes look all right?
Because they just had people. It shows you just had people knitting them and putting them together.
Oh.
So they've got like basic, really really basic industries going on, in terms of like textiles and basic electricity and power and things. But it's basically like just a sub-medieval level.
Mm.
It's nowhere. It's absolutely nothing like it was. Is that slow motion?
Ooh, that was good.
That might be the only a bit of like filmic touch.
It's not even proper slow-mo though. It was.
Yeah.
That's not. I like cinematography like that. It's very visual, without being heavily visual.
It becomes like a film now.
Yeah.
I know that sounded really weird, but
it becomes a film effectively.
They get the money money's worth out of that barn. Keeps fading to black.
I like that though. That's a nice element. It kind of, look, from a filmmaking standpoint, those fade to blacks are quite nice because they sort of illustrate a gap in the knowledge of the viewer. It's sort of their way of saying.
I just remembered. Oh, at least Sainsbury's is still around.
Oh, thank God.
And the nuclear. Thank fuck.
If Aldi goes belly up though, oh
no, nightmare.
But no, those
but I was going to say this before. I just remembered. This goes back to what I was saying about how they should put an incorrect runtime.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here now going, oh, it's still going.
When will it end? When will it stop? When will the madness stop?
That's one criticism I think I'd say now. Watching it again all these years later, is that it's probably a bit like long at the end. But I get why it's long. I get that that's the point. It's just going to pile on more and more misery.
Johnny Be Good still playing.
What's still playing?
Johnny Be Good.
Oh yeah, I just heard it. Irony.
That is a nice callback.
I forgot all about that.
Bonus points.
This film has a very PIF-esque sense of irony, doesn't it? Like with the poster before and the.
Oh, you can see the people being hung.
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed that before.
It's just too dark on the VHS to really.
Yeah. Jeez.
I'm guessing they were like publicly executed. Well, maybe not publicly, but.
Or maybe they just gave up.
Yeah. That's more likely in it, unfortunately. So as we reach the end of this, the happy ending of this fairy tale, what are your final thoughts?
I was about to say, as we sit here in stony silence, as a woman who doesn't understand what giving birth is gives birth.
I think it's did it finally defeat us?
I think that we've finally hit peak depression. This is the end.
I remember what happens here.
Yeah, this isn't a nice ending.
No, it's not what you call a happy ending.
Happy apocalypse, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Oh.
Sweet dreams. We've reached the. What are your final thoughts on all this?
I think that it's an utterly. I still probably stand that this is the most depressing film that I've ever seen.
I'm pretty sure when I read somewhere that when this first aired, and anyone who watched it when it first aired, please correct me on this if I'm wrong, but that when the cut from her freeze frame and then the credits, there was like a minute of black screen.
Oh, afterwards?
Yeah.
So the credits were running, then a minute of black screen?
No. Freeze frame on her.
Yeah,
and
cut
then,
to black.
Then black screen.
Oh, and then titles.
And then the credits ran very slowly.
Yee.
Christine Buckley, was that the woman who weed herself?
I think it might have been. I wonder what she's credited as. I'll have to wind
Woman in
this back and take a look.
supermarket. They won't credit her as woman who weed herself.
Urinating woman. I think that this is arguably one of the most depressing films that I've ever sat through, and I have sat through a lot of very depressing films. I would say that it's
Paul Vaughan, that was the narrator.
a real shame that this film isn't more widely seen.
It's a very important film. It's a bit long.
It's a bit long, but it's a very. But it needs to be. That's
I know.
the thing.
I know.
It needs to be.
It needs to be, and I still. It's not. Oh, Carl Sagan was one of the advisors.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't. I know why it's long. I know why it's the way it is. But as an actual experience watching it now, I do admit I did get a bit. I did feel it dragging a bit at times, but like it's a weird feeling because I get why it dragged. It's a necessary evil.
As I say, I think for me, I would say that the opposite was the case. I think that this film actually zipped past quicker than I remember it doing. I remember watching it the first time and thinking that it was actually a bit of a drag, but watching it a second time, here and now, I think that it's actually sped past pretty quickly. But, you know, I think it's probably each to their own on that, really. I mean, I can understand... There are bits where it does drag quite a bit. I mean, there's only so many times you can show somebody slowly dying in a pool of their own urine and vomit.
Imagine cutting from that now to the... to, like, the BBC Globe. I mean, you'd have no idea what to...
You'd just sort of be sat there...
to process that, would you?
No. There's a reason why the credits run in silence.
Well, they couldn't have, like, a cheery song over it.
That's the thing, though. If they modernised this film, it would. If they modernised this film, the end credits would be this harrowing kind of Terminator 2-esque music, and that'd be...
Everything modern is shit.
That's what
Only
we've come
old
to the
things are
conclusion of.
And on that
bombshell.
depressing note... No! On that...
Come on, say it on that bombshell.
No.
It's what?
Oh. Don't do this.
Give him a round of applause.
I think that's enough now.
I think that's us. So thank you if you've sat through what I can only describe as 2 hours of two film students rambling.
Do you have any juice or anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for watching or listening even. That was Threads. Go and look it up. It's a riot.